Welcome into the Stack Shack Sports Show. Today we're going to be talking about the coaching carousel, specifically in the NFL, but we're going to start with a bit of a bombshell news drop from Yahoo Sports' Dan Wetzel. Jim Harbaugh is remaining engaged in contract talks with Michigan, as he's been reported to be meeting with multiple teams around the leagues. He interviewed with the Chargers earlier, and then I believe earlier this morning he interviewed with the Falcons. He's doing his due diligence with the NFL. A lot of talk earlier this season when he changed his agent to an NFL agent, somewhat spelling potentially a move to the NFL. He switched longtime agents to somebody who is more specifically suited for NFL-type jobs and NFL negotiations. It's the same agent of Sean Payton, of Tom Brady, etc., etc. Some really high-profile names, but all NFL names for the most part. So he moves agents, has started interviewing with jobs, but still interviewing and still negotiating, we should say, with Michigan. But what was so interesting about this article that it brought up is he's delaying the start date of the new contract to try and keep the buyout lower, right? He's not going to sign a big contract with Michigan yet. He's trying to delay that start date so that it's not as expensive for an NFL team to get him, should that deal be really nice, okay? Again, Michigan's looking to increase it to about $4 million when it's 1.5 right now. So he's trying to keep the costs down so he can make more money. Makes sense. But the bigger thing that I think is more interesting and more impactful for this Harbaugh situation is what he's asking for in this Michigan contract. He's seeking a matrix of fines to be spelled out for any future NCAA violations and wants to prohibit the school's athletic director from firing him for cause, instead having that decision, should it arise, rest in a 3-member arbitration panel. Kind of interesting. Not typically things you see a lot in contract negotiations. To me, this makes me think, Harbaugh does not trust the NCAA. And to be fair, he doesn't have a lot of reason to in the last few weeks and months and years and seasons. There's not been the best clarity from the NCAA. And we've been complaining about this for years. But I think it's interesting that Harbaugh is saying, hey, if I want to come back, if I do come back, I want to get this all out of the way right now. If they find that I've done anything, if they give me a level 1 violation, a level 2 violation, etc., what happens? I want it defined. I want it explained. To me, this does make me think that Harbaugh knows he's going to get busted for something. Now, it could be just a total fear of who knows what the NCAA is going to do, but I think this makes it sound a lot like Harbaugh did something wrong. Now, you can argue whether the violations are then justified and the punishments for those violations. But I think he knows he violated some stuff. And maybe they were honest mistakes. Maybe this is a situation where he didn't know about the scouting, but now he's looked at the evidence and goes, yep, they're going to get us on scouting. He wants to know, and he doesn't want the AD to be able to fire him for cause. Kind of weird. It does make sense from Harbaugh's perspective. We said when these violations were starting to get down, especially with the second 3-game suspension from the NCAA and the Big Ten, when that second suspension came in, I said, he's gone. He's leaving. He's tired of this. His story is, he bought a kid a cheeseburger, and that was the recruiting violation because he paid for something. The advanced scouting, they've got videos. The videos I've heard of and seen, a coach went to these games videotaping on his iPhone the sidelines. Is that completely game-changing? Does that change the course of all the games they played. Did they go over the line? Probably, but I have the same feeling with all of the scouting issues. Of course you're trying to steal signs. I don't understand why this is always a wild thing. The fact that a team would not be switching signs is crazy. Everybody tries to steal signs. It was the same problem with the Astros in baseball, and I know I'm probably in the minority on this. But they used advanced scouting or whatever, and sure, maybe they crossed the line with, they had some videotapes of people signing and they were stealing signs. Everybody is trying to steal signs. That's why even when I was in middle school baseball, we switched our signs up every week. Right? Let's tone it down a little bit. Whenever it's these scouting things of, they're stealing signs, why are their opponents not changing their signs every week? And if you're really worried about it, I don't know, exploit it. The TCU team, they interviewed some of those players. They're like, oh yeah, we knew they had our signs, so we intentionally threw them off. Okay. I don't... It obviously didn't make a big factor this season. There was no advanced scouting, and they won a national championship. So, again, were there violations? Yes. Should there be punishments? Yes. Were they super egregious? Maybe not. And maybe that's what Harbaugh's looking at, is saying, hey, I don't know what the NCAA has a weird history of not being very, shall we say, consistent with how they implement and how they enforce things, how they deal out punishments. This didn't used to be a rule, the advanced scouting thing, and then it became a rule, and it has been a rule for a fair amount of time. Did Harbaugh know? I don't know. Probably. Or maybe he should have known, and that's why he's worried about getting violations. And so he wants to know, what's the situation here? He wants some protection. It does seem to me that Harbaugh does sound like he wants to stay in Michigan, potentially. And that, I've waffled on. When the second violation, was brought up, this advanced scouting thing, because remember, off-season, we were all talking about their recruiting violations. This advanced scouting situation, when that came up, I figured, oh, he's gone. He's so tired of the NCAA. He's just going to go back to the pros. He can make more money, have more time off, deal with adults, deal with a commissioner, deal with an owner, not have to fly around the country, not have to argue about NIL, not have to figure out this new wave of college football. But then the university started backing him a lot, and I thought, well, okay, if the university is backing him, they're sticking their necks out for him, maybe that means that he's given some sort of confirmation, hey, I'm staying. I'm staying here in Ann Arbor. I'm going to be the Michigan head coach in the future. That's what I want. Then I think, as the season progressed, he was real focused on winning that national championship. He's got it now. Does that become all right, I got Michigan a national championship, let's move on? Maybe that's his thought. Maybe that's his thought. I don't know. But I think it is interesting now. He's asking for these extra concessions from Michigan. Kind of like, hey, if I stay here, I want to guarantee that you're not just going to fire me. That I'm not just going to have a big $10 million fine and lose my salary for the year. I don't want to be sidelined at home on the couch anymore. That seems to be the structure. Personally, I think Jim needs to move on. If I'm Michigan, I don't like this. Because what if we find out more stuff? Like, let's take the worst case scenario for Michigan here. Maybe Jim Harbaugh's asking for all this stuff because he knows something's coming. He knows of something. Maybe they get the kind of a death penalty like situation where they lose tons of scholarships. They get barred from the playoff. They have to forfeit a trophy. They lose a bunch of, NIL money or whatever. If that happens, do you really want to be paying Jim Harbaugh a ton of money? And he's asking for all these concessions, but I doubt there's anything in there that says he can't next season go to the NFL. There will be a buyout, and it'll be $4 million, but that's not crazy when you're talking about $11 million a year is going to be his salary. So I don't think this is a good setup for Michigan. The best case scenario, he's not hiding anything. There's no future problems. There's not going to be further investigations. There's no other violations to know about. The NCAA says, the 3-game suspension was enough. We're just going to hold it there. That's your best case scenario, and I don't think that's particularly awesome. Jim Harbaugh is a great coach, though. So it is tempting to keep him, but you're giving up a lot. There's a lot of these concessions, and even in the best case scenario, he might still leave next year with a buyout. You don't know. I also think this is a unique season, and this will launch us into more the discussion of the head coaching carousel. There are some really good options this year if you're looking to coach somewhere. And as of this morning, we have announced New England Patriots is no longer a job opening available. Gerard Mayo hired. Congratulations to him. Excited for him. Young guy, first-time head coach, former player, Patriot guy through and through. But not a lot of experience and not a great roster he's coming into, especially as a defensive guy. I think the offensive coordinator is going to be very key with this. There's some rumors of a bit of a bidding war maybe going on with Cliff Kingsbury, Ben Johnson, but he's going to probably get a head coaching job. We'll see. There's rumblings. Offensive coordinator is going to be key for whoever the Patriots hire. The other one is the Raiders. It's really feeling like Antonio Pierce. That has not been officially announced as of my recording this. But he seems to be the front runner for that job. I think that would be the right hire for the Raiders. I think he was a very consistent coach. The players like him. The Raiders just need some stability right now. They had the Gruden situation, the Ruggs situation. They lost Derek Carr. They bring in Josh McDaniels. And if you remember right, they got rid of a very well-liked assistant in that situation. Josh McDaniels did not do well. They regressed under him as a head coach. They fire him mid-season. Pierce comes in and really rights the ship. This was a decent team down the stretch. They played hard. They played well. They seemed to come together as a team, and I don't think you want to break that up. I mean, there's some very hyperbolic, I think, statements of, Crosby saying he's going to sit out if they don't hire Pierce. There's all sorts of rumors of players really, really liking Pierce and threatening some major things to the organization should they not hire him. I think he would be an awesome hire. I think that's the best fit for the Raiders. But if you're Jim Harbaugh, to get back to what we were really talking about, there's a couple of options that look really, really nice. The first is the Seattle Seahawks. Pete Carroll announced his exit. He's going to be an advisory role, but rumors are he might actually want another head coaching job somewhere else. But whether you believe that or not, whether he sticks in the advisory role or not, the Seahawks are a fun young team. They're missing a quarterback. But that offense has some pieces, and that defense is young and fast. It's that kind of young Legion of Boom, Pete Carroll type secondary and defense where they play fast. They're young. They've done really well in the draft, and they have quite a bit of draft capital to maybe make a move for a free agent quarterback. Or if they wanted to get real aggressive, maybe move up in the draft to try and get a quarterback. I don't know that they would do that, but the Seahawks are a very interesting team if you're a candidate, because they have quite a few pieces. They feel like they're a quarterback away from being a very strong competitor. The Titans are not in quite as good a position, but Vrabel's done well. I think Vrabel is one of the top leading coaches out there. Pretty interesting. We'll see. I don't think the Titans is the best job. The Falcons, a lot of people talk about the Falcons, and Harbaugh has interviewed with the Falcons. So has Bill Belichick. Rumors are Falcons really want Bill. It feels like a weird fit to me. We got new rumors maybe that the Eagles are getting rid of Sirianni. Again, right now, as of recording this, Sirianni has not been fired. Mike McCarthy has not been fired. Those two are rumors. Apparently tomorrow, Mike McCarthy is meeting with the Jones family and Jerry, and it's rumored that it's very much an interview, like, should we keep you? Prove to us we need to keep you. So, interesting situation there with those two potential openings. But looking at the openings that are available, Harbaugh interviewed with the Falcons. I think he would be good in Atlanta. I think Harbaugh's good anywhere he is. I think Seattle's a better job than Atlanta. And you do look at Jim, and I know he's been in Michigan recently, but if you look back on his career, he's been a bit of a West Coast guy, right? San Diego State, Stanford, San Francisco. He's done a lot of coaching on the West Coast. I think Jim goes back to the West Coast. Now, there are some rumors. They talk about, oh, Jim's getting older. He wants to be closer to family. His brother's in Baltimore. Why not one of these more East Coast or a Midwest or a South team? I have a feeling he's going back to the West Coast. And I don't think the Raiders is going to be open because I think Pierce is getting him. It's the Chargers. To me, it's a no-brainer. Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers makes the most sense. Makes the most sense. West Coast team. A team that is hungry for a coach to bring in some structure, some good decision-making. Staley really struggled. I mean, they fired Staley mid-season. They should have fired him at the end of last season. But the Chargers make the most sense. It almost feels like a perfect fit. He goes there, he has a quarterback. He has some weapons on offense, kind of an expensive defense, but, and I'm not the only one who's saying this, Jim Harbaugh is probably going to crush the draft these first couple of years because he recruited all these guys out of college. He played against them in college. There's no level of scouting that can compare as a head coach. If you're in the NFL, you don't get to watch every single college football game. Jim is going to have an in-depth, intimate knowledge about the players coming out. Go look at Pete Carroll. When he came away from SC, those first few drafts in Seattle, he built an absolute monster of a team. Found players all over the place. And that's what I would assume Jim could do. And we've seen that happen. When you come out of college, you were a good, productive coach. You come into the NFL, typically your drafts are good. Maybe your team is bad. Maybe you don't adapt well to the NFL football game. But at least your drafts tend to be decent, especially if you have some say in them. Obviously, sometimes you're coming out, You don't really have any say in the draft because the GM and the scouts and everything is already established. But Jim's going to want some control. He's rumored to always have wanted control. He likes control over personnel to an extent, and I think he would be pretty good with personnel for the beginning. Even last time when he came into San Francisco, he turned that team around quickly, and he drafted very well in those first few years. So I would have no doubt that the same thing would be true. The Chargers make the most sense. The only thing that I think could potentially cause a problem for Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers, and I think this would not only be a problem for him going to the Chargers, but I think this would be a detriment to his NFL career, is if he is too much in love with J.J. McCarthy. I know you just won a national championship with him. I know he's kind of your guy. But J.J. McCarthy is not worth giving up the LA Chargers job for, in my opinion. But that would be the only thing I could see that would make the Chargers not the right fit for Jim, is if he went there and he was saying, you know what, I really just want to go someplace where I can draft JJ, because JJ's entering the draft. He said he is. If that's his goal, is I want JJ McCarthy as my quarterback, then the Chargers obviously don't work because they have Justin Herbert. But to me, that would be nearly career suicide. He probably would find a way to make it work. Jim's made a lot of quarterbacks work. But, oh man, you're going to give up Justin Herbert, who maybe we can have a discussion. I don't think he's the, top 3, top 4 quarterback. I don't think I've seen that yet. But he's also had a disaster at head coach and a lot of weapons really struggling and a defense that's been terrible. So Justin Herbert with Jim Harbaugh as the coach, now that might be interesting. That might be a top 5, top 4 quarterback. But to give up an established, a known commodity in the NFL, we know he can play. Like, there's no question Justin Herbert can absolutely play and is absolutely deserving of a starting job in the NFL, right? To give up that, to go to some team so you can draft J.J. McCarthy is absolutely insane to me. Absolutely mentally insane to me. You can't do that. So that's the only thing that I could see. Maybe he's so much in love with JJ, feels so connected to him, appreciative of him, excited about his future. Maybe he just believes in him so much, and maybe he's seen something we haven't in practice, but man, to give up a known commodity with the LA Chargers is crazy to me. Absolutely crazy to me. So that's where I think Jim's going to go. I think he's going to end up in the Chargers. I think he's going to be in LA coaching that Chargers team, and I think they're going to get really good really fast. Really good really fast. It's going to be pretty awesome to see. I'd be very excited for the Chargers. Kind of a forgotten franchise in many cases. Always a disappointing franchise. Jim, I think, makes them instantly better. Instantly a playoff team. Maybe more than that. We'd have to see, obviously how the season went on. That's where I think he's going to end up. Let me know down below in the comments where you think Jim Harbaugh ends up. Does he stay at Michigan? Do you think Michigan caves and gives him his concessions that he wants regarding not getting fired? Now, it is still would go to an arbitration, just not being able to be fired by the AD. Or do you think he moves on to the NFL? And if so, where do you think he ends up? Let me know in the comments down below, and we'll see you tomorrow.